Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again for the 116th week of the You, Me, and BTC podcast. I guess it's not once again for the 116th week because we've never had a 116th week before, but it's welcome back once again. And aside from that, this is the 116th week. Okay, I don't know if that made sense, but thanks for being here anyway. I am Daniel Brown, and I'm here with
Tim Baker
and John Stuart.
So yeah, if you want to find out more of the You, Me, and BTC podcast, you can go to youmeandbtc.com. I'm going to say it 100 more times, just like we did last week, because why not? Anyway, we also have another super special guest. We've kind of had a string of guests. I think this is, the third or fourth week in a row with guests, which doesn't happen all the time, but it's awesome when it does. And I think, well, first of all, we have with us Miss Angela Keaton, the, I guess, editor. I don't know. She helps run antiwar.com. So, Angela, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, I am so glad to be back on the show. Last time I was with Drew Phillips, and we helped us make a beautiful, dramatic moment of the peace haikus, which you guys helped sponsor. So thank you so much. I'm director of operations at antiwar.com. I do anything that basically isn't in terms of setting editorial direction. Which can be everything from outreach to organizing activism to doing very low-level editing. But mostly I really focus on finding funding, making sure that the activist and reader base is happy and focused, and also just appear at all the different places where I can table and talk to strangers about the war, ideally non-activists. So I do it's a little bit of everything for antiwar.com. But one of the things we do, because I do fundraising, is I am involved in Bitcoin, and
right.
I don't know if we talked about this in the episode, Drew, but, initially, I'm a second-generation libertarian. I've seen just about everything, and I'm kind of old school when it comes to things like gold standard and tangible hard money. So when Bitcoin first came along, I called it a rather rude name, which I won't say on your show. Rhymes with Bitcoin. So that was years ago. I've gotten far past that now with Bitcoin. So and now it plays an interesting role in my life and in my activism. But that's all centered around I work at antiwar.com.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what we've seen you do. We've met you at a couple conferences, and we have talked about Bitcoin a lot, and you promote the site and promote the anti-war / pro-peace mentality, and I think you've always done some great work. And I also was going to add, I think that you are our most common guest, I guess. We've had a couple 2-time guests now, but I think you're our only 3-time guest, and I think maybe this is the 4th time, or maybe we just had Drew one time, but yeah, so you're our most common guest so far, and that's great. So,
don't say common, that sounds bad. Say most frequent.
Most frequent? Yeah, I guess that works. I don't know, I was trying to come up with a term.
You're not a common guest.
But no, it's great on the most frequent. Antiwar.com, we took Bitcoin on in November of 2012, and we kind of decided to go in, and we had to think about it for a while. We went in deep. We cover digital currency internationally as part of our foreign policy. And, of course, at the time we thought we were kind of thinking ahead, but now, of course, we've been correct, right? Bitcoin, of course, has been used into this thing about things that might help terrorists. Terrorists might use Bitcoin. They might use bicycles, too, but we haven't outlawed bicycles yet.
We should, though. We definitely should. They're very dangerous, and they provide alternative ways of transportation that, I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable with them being on the road.
Yes, the roads that won't get built under our way of life, I know. It goes back to we didn't know, how, all the reasons why we would be about Bitcoin, but the obvious ones are the ones that you've all heard before, of course, we're trying to get out of, fiat currency, empire's blood money, and draw attention to the way people think about banking and how words are financed. And that, everyone listening to this already knows that and probably heard, has the Ron Paul elevator speech down on the Fed pretty much. But there's lots of other reasons that are specific to antiwar.com. Anti-war groups, and this is fairly common for anti-war groups, it's not that unusual, but anti-war activists have been under federal scrutiny since World War I. And antiwar.com is under specific notice from the FBI. So one of the things that Bitcoin is really good for is for people who are scared off by realization that the FBI is monitoring us, and that did cause us to lose some donors because not everyone was comfortable with that, even though, it wasn't bad terms or anything. They just didn't want that much attention drawn to themselves. So, which is understandable. But Bitcoin, while not perfectly private and anonymous, certainly is for us a way of backup funding in case everything goes wrong, including that we're under, if we ever lose our ability to publish because of surveillance by one of the many intelligence agencies that runs the country. So for us, it is really important. We've kind of expanded on that, and we're looking for new ways to make it relevant to what our mission is. So I'm going to be, at the end of the month, I am going to be speaking with MK Lords at the San Diego Bitcoin meetup, and we're going to talk about more radical ways, including we've been reading a lot of discussions by sex workers. One of the things is that people can have sexual privacy if they want to hire the services of an escort or something. They can do this, and this transaction not only is private on the customer's end, but also on the sex service end. So, in other words, so people, people who do sex work, if they use certain interfaces, can get their money confiscated from them for, voluntary consensual sex, for exchanging money because of that. So, which is really a pretty horrible thing. So, Bitcoin definitely is going to be a way of people avoiding that, and it's something that hasn't been emphasized too much inside the libertarian world, though in other places where I read a lot of sex worker sites for activism, and it's a pretty exciting, digital currency is a pretty exciting time for people in that industry, as well as for clients. So that's one of the things we're going to touch on, and hopefully people will see that really is a good, positive reason why.
Yeah, that's actually funny. We have a tool on our website that allows people to create an image that displays a Bitcoin price, and every time the image loads, it displays the correct price. So if you want to sell something for $100, you can create an image that will always load the Bitcoin price for $100 or whatever price you set. And every day we get hundreds of hits from I think it's an escort or something like that, who he has a website, and he uses our images, our Bitcoin price images, to sell his services. And we get so many hits from him every day, or her. It might be I think it's a transgender, I forget. But anyway, I thought that was interesting because that's about what's going on right there. So
it's definitely going to allow people to have private lives and regain some privacy from the United States government. I mean, we can do this. I mean, it is possible that we can, we learn to create privacy for ourselves, especially hopefully in our financial and business lives. So, which is very important. It's just as important to us as, every other aspect of our lives. So, that's why I'm not just pushing it in terms of the war matter, but thinking of it in terms of all the things that we can do that can be private and safe and normal again because we have Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I should ask, I think we asked almost this exact question in our first interview, which had to be over a year ago. Probably a year and a half or so. And that was, probably a couple months after we first met you and after we first started learning what you were all about and everything at the Bitcoin and the Beltway conference. But so I guess I just want to ask, how's that going? I mean, what is the attitude like in the overlap between Bitcoin and anti-war? Especially, how has it changed in the past year? Have you gotten a lot more interest and donations with Bitcoin? Is it maybe more of just a backup thing that people know about and they're willing to use if they need to? I don't know. Yeah, what's going on there?
It's a lot of different things. I mean, one of the reasons why we take Bitcoin is certainly market demand. I mean, if you think about the kind of people who would read an anti-war site, and, people on the hard left certainly, but a lot of libertarians and anarchists, and within that you're going to have a certain amount of people who, they're going to be early adopters of any kind of new technology if they're not actually, involved in creating it for themselves. So the part of the reason why we took it is people would just write me and say, hey, are you going to take Bitcoin? And I got enough of those letters to where I decided, this might be the right thing to do. And this, I had folks explaining it to board members who, like me, in a more traditional Austrian approach to economics, about things that, that money is being backed by something that's real and tangible. But once I got past that, and once the rest of us got past that sort of bit of squeamishness, it was amazing what happened, and they get a lot of interest from certainly from Bitcoin charities. Now this is back, November of 2012. So I mean, things were a little bit different in 2013 for Bitcoin generally. So, we got some rather sizable donations, and some of our regular donors decided that they would like to give in Bitcoin. Some this is not just because of the reaction to the FBI matter, but also because they really believe in digital currency. And they want, this is, it's like a double political stance for them. So that's why it was very exciting. But it goes in phases. I'd like to get more in Bitcoin, and in part because, I'd like to, things that we can get for antiwar.com that we can pay directly in Bitcoin, including, certain kinds of technical help, which is great because that's, it's a way we can exchange, goods for services, and it's a way of being very, very modern about it. And also, partially at least trying to live by certain principles. And, we have vendors who are very, very big in the Bitcoin world too. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, one of our main sponsors, which is Roberts and Roberts. And if you go to rrbi.co,
I think, yep.
.co.
Yep.
I know it was screwed up, but, it's just, we have people who know a lot about hard currency who are Bitcoin enthusiasts. That means it's probably a smart and good thing. So, yes, for us, it's definitely, it's part of a long-term strategy. Yes, it's kind of hopefully a backup plan as well. It should be. I'd like it to be. But also it's the future, and I want to live in the future, as, a lot of the staff does. Well, maybe not our editorial director, Justin Raimondo. He might not want to live in the future, but in the 90s, Bitcoin would have been great. So, that's it. For us. It's definitely the right thing. And yeah, and yes, I mean, I'm motivated to come on shows about Bitcoin because I want people who are anti-war to give us money in Bitcoin, and this is because it's great all the way around. You were talking about you're mentioning overlaps between anti-war audiences. When I went to BitCon in 2013. It's that audience. And I mean, I saw about 20 libertarians I knew, but there were 2,000 people there. And clearly, 1,980 of them I didn't know. So they were all from the tech world who, the people who gravitated to that event, were, the kind of mindset that Bitcoin tends to be an anti-authoritarian mindset. So I didn't have to sell anyone on the anti-war message. We were doing a shared table with Free Aid and Bitcoin Not Bombs, which is an important part of antiwar.com's PR and social networking strategy. And Free Aid is a group of people with medical services, do volunteer at libertarian events. So if someone has a heart attack, boom, we've got someone who can do that. We shared a table, and it was the most amazing retail sales day of any booth I've ever done in any event ever. But what was amazing about those that we didn't have to. Everyone wanted to spend, everyone wanted to show off their Bitcoin and spend their Bitcoin and get, Bitcoin shot glasses. It was just, and one man was teaching his son about, 9-year-old son about economics, and he came by the table and started explaining what antiwar.com was and all of these theories as a little 9-year-old, and he was taking pictures of stuff. I mean, it was just like it was a very interesting event. But I didn't have to tell anyone why they needed to be anti-war. They were already there. Those people, the people in the Bitcoin world already have that down. Even if they haven't memorized all the, timelines of what happened in Syria or whatever, they're instinctively anti-war. So that's why, I'll always make the time to talk to people who in the Bitcoin world, because that's maybe where the future of the anti-war movement is. I mean, you're trying to look for groups of people who are anti-authoritarian or people who are motivated by other reasons to be anti-war, including in people of faith or people who have a political commitment to pacifism. But it's just with Bitcoin, it's a very easy match. It's not hard to explain to people who are involved in Bitcoin why war is bad. And I highly recommend anyone in your listening audience, if they haven't heard, on antiwar.com's blog, some time ago, we had the video of Roger Vere's speech on war and Bitcoin and why peace is so important to him. And I think that's a really good thing for people to listen to. It's very inspirational. So if you Google that, or if you want, you can email me at angela@antiwar.com and I can send people links. So.
Yeah, that reminds me also, we got a tweet just before we started recording from Bitcoin Not Bombs. I'm assuming that's Drew Phillips that tweeted us. And he said for speaking of Bitcoin Not Bombs in our audience, he said that you guys listening should tweet to anti-war.com. It's anti-war.com, all one word, on Twitter. And use the hashtag why I am anti-war, and just let us know. I mean, tell us what you're thinking about and why you're anti-war. Send us a tweet like that, and we'd love to hear it. Are you tired of Bitcoin dice and ready for something different? Try LuckyBit, the original falling coin game, at luckybit. It's the most exciting Bitcoin game on the web. You can bet on 5 different payout lines and win up to 999 times your bet. You can even use their faucet to get some free Bitcoin. Dice is boring. Play different at LuckyBit. Check it out at luckybit. So, Angela, you mentioned also before we started recording that you had some interesting ideas about where Bitcoin might go or what we could do with it. I haven't heard them yet, so I'm interested too. So can you share some of that, what you're thinking there?
Well, that's where I was kind of going with, why I was talking about things like sex work, because it's just, we're having a radical shift in our culture, and we can, thank Ron Paul and some other people for that. I'm not talking about in terms of our politics. I mean, this election cycle, whatever, that's stupidity. Not that. I'm talking about like real cultural change. And that's why I think Bitcoin is, that's why, I mean, it's still worth it. Even when I get bored or I get tired of all the Bitcoin death calls, like every other day someone's saying today is the day Bitcoin is going to die, or more regulations or more problems, it's still worth it, because if it's not Bitcoin, it'll be something else eventually. But in the way that libertarians, and specifically I'm talking to libertarians, but this is for anyone who wants freedom, the ability to be able to exchange goods and services, any kind, or any kind of things or money for any reason, or just give something to somebody, that you can do that with privacy, that you don't really have. I mean, we haven't had any more, certainly not in my lifetime, because I was born around the time, the war on drugs began. And so it, for me, I mean, all my life, there's always been all these crazy regulations about money. And as I've gotten older and older, like Know Your Customer in 1999 was a big deal, because it made it so that basically, once you took a certain amount of cash out of your bank account, you had to sign all kinds of paperwork, and that amount got smaller and smaller and smaller, and I lost track when it got down to like $3,000. But that, any kind of cash it has to be documented. And which makes, whatever, if I want to buy a used car, what the hell business of that is anyone's? Or if I want to buy, all kinds of drugs or whatever, certainly no one's business. Of course, lots of important, good and wholesome things that I, would do with cash. But the fact that it has to be documented, which is really it's kind of a weird thing, and I don't use this expression often because I realize how it could be misconstrued, but like, one of the few good things about America was that, what was in your bank account really was private. I mean, it was kind of like this bourgeois, norm that you didn't ask people how much they made, or you didn't discuss the specifics of their money. It was just understood as part of being well-bred. It was considered vulgar and crass to do so. But now the government has all kinds of information about how you spend your money and what you're doing. And, and so the other side of this too, and I just, I love the idea of digital currency, but under a current system, the system the way it is now, the life that we're living, I don't want to see cash go away. I want to be able to do things with cash and receive cash from people without it being documented for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah, I have a story that I should share briefly. I mean, there's actually not much to it, but just a few days, or maybe it was actually just yesterday, but my mom sent me a text and called me up and said that my entire family had our bank accounts shut down. And I mean, we still don't know why, but I'm guessing it has something to do with me using Bitcoin and buying some and selling some. So yeah, I'm with you there about, the tradition, the banking system and the restrictions about how much money you can send and the paperwork that just how suspicious they are. And or at least they say they're suspicious that you're doing bad stuff, but really they just want to collect information and in case they need to use it against you or something. Well, yeah, that happened to me the other day, and it is a whole fiasco. But anyway, so yeah, I completely agree. And that also reminds me of another thing. Speaking of the end of cash or just the government trying to keep an eye on your money, you sent me an article a couple weeks ago called ISIS and the End of Cash. And I actually won't even say much more. I'll just ask you what was the idea there, and how does that relate to Bitcoin?
Well, I was hoping that folks, I sent this out to different people because thankfully I got some folks to interview Jason Ditz, our news editor, who wrote this for the American Conservative. And this is, and Jason's an expert. I mean, he studies terrorism day in and day out, and he's particularly on questions dealing with Syria and ISIS and so on. I mean, very few people know as much as Jason does, so that's why he's our news editor. But he also knows quite a bit about finance, and you can find his work at what is the great money site that's name is really strange, sounds like it's a men's rights site, Seeking Alpha. Well, it's a financial site. I thought it was a men's rights site. I guess I was confused. But anyway, it's a financial site, and Jason also writes there as well. But basically, though, he I'll just to give you a few lines from, and you can find this at the American Conservative. The date on it was February 24th, and you can also write me if you want the link. But quote, if you listen to administration officials, the key to winning the war on ISIS is to cut off the group's funding, some of which the government claims is tied up in stacks of U.S. dollars. At the same time, banking interests and policymakers claim the possession of a $100 bill is practically evidence of criminality in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that crazy, right? They're going to try to push, basically, is that they're going to try to use this to eliminate the physical money. And this is why foreign policy, I'll just make my little weird stump speech, foreign policy is the most important thing that anarchists and libertarians should focus on. Because the foreign policy is everything. This is our police state. It's just our police state exported. It always kind of splashes back all over us, and not just in blowback, but in just the constant violation of our civil liberties under the guise of trying to protect us from terrorism. So that's why my focus is always on these real basic issues like war and peace, police state. That's kind of where I put my efforts. Because as you can see, the war on terror affects everything. I don't want to live in a society, at least in the current situation anyway, they're in, without cash.
Yeah. So you mentioned also that, just like they want to end cash because they think they can watch you better. You briefly mentioned before we started recording that in some ways that's one of the risks of Bitcoin, because it is online and people can see it, just like if we had no cash. So can you share some thoughts on that? I mean, how much risk do you think there is? Do we need to be worried about them watching Bitcoin too much or anything? I mean, do you think ISIS, I know there were some headlines that said like ISIS was using Bitcoin before, and I don't know how true they were, but what do you think about that? Should we be worried about actually using Bitcoin in some ways?
Well, I mean, I'm just going based on my own experiences with antiwar.com. Like, it would have been ridiculous to assume that antiwar.com wasn't under FBI surveillance. And I think in terms of people who are big movers and shakers in Bitcoin should at least, be aware of things like COINTELPRO and do some reading historically on things the FBI does. I mean, things that are actually on the historical record, not so much conspiracy theory. It's funny in our movement we kind of get, folks get all worked up over all kinds of conspiracy theories, but things that the FBI and CIA have actually done that, the documents have come forward and, witness accounts and so on, the Freedom of Information Act kind of things, and that, hardcore serious journalism is all documented, we totally ignore. And so it would be naive not to assume that there's going to be monitoring of journalists, let's say, who cover Bitcoin, because they're influential, and a lot of these young people who got rich off of Bitcoin pretty quickly, I'm certain that they're under something, this is just guessing. I'm assuming, though, that given the interest in Bitcoin by some big players and how much the state wants to regulate it, they know that probably the best bet is to co-opt it as opposed to outlaw it.
Well, yeah, I think co-opting is definitely more beneficial for them because they can run more stuff or keep control of it. That's what everyone's always talking about, it getting too big, too many people getting, like, if that's where people are worried about it when you're, it's going more mainstream, right?
Yeah, isn't that kind of what we covered with the article from Amir Taki a few weeks ago, where he was saying, like, if it gets too big, then the government will just step in and they'll use it for funding warfare and for welfare and whatever. Not really if it gets too big.
It'll just become another part of that system.
Yeah. Like, it's not really about Bitcoin doing that. It's just like they're going to use it for all those things just as much as they use the dollar now. Maybe. Is that what he was saying?
Taki or me?
Well, both.
And kind of wrapped up in that, he was also saying that maybe Bitcoin isn't something that we should expect everybody to use or be able to use.
I thought that was what his main point was, but I think he definitely said something along the lines of where Bitcoin could be very valuable for the government if they can figure out a way for them to still get taxes from it. They're not going to have any problem as long as they get their cut from it and as long as they're able to keep track of it.
I think I would agree with that. Just like Angela said, co-opting it, and also you would be mistaken to assume that they're not watching Bitcoin. I mean,
oh no, I thought Bitcoin's anonymous, Daniel. No one could see me do this.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though. Is that's one of the reasons that we're here. No, I don't know if that's right, but
that is why we are here, people, to tell you all, to make sure you don't make mistakes.
One thing we like to tell people is just, when we're on the air and recording and everything, is just, hey, make sure you're careful with your Bitcoin. Make sure you know how to be anonymous if you need to be anonymous, because you got to change addresses. You got to learn about shared coin and whatever, because just like you said, Angela, of course they're watching. It's a public ledger worth what is it? Probably, I don't know, a couple $2 billion is the market cap of Bitcoin. So of course they're watching. And I mean, we've also had some interesting conversations about whether privacy is overrated and should we be, they could come after us for what we do with Bitcoin, but they could come after us for anything, anytime if they really wanted to. I mean, they've got tanks and nuclear bombs or whatever. So
and
I don't know.
I'm not as worried about. You got drones; they can watch everything.
Well, yeah. I mean, It's true. Which actually, this isn't somewhere we had planned on going, but now I'm actually really interested to know, Angela, what you think. We have an episode titled "Is Privacy Overrated?" We kind of struggled with that question just because some people go way out of their ways to hide in the corner, and I mean, I don't think we never said that privacy is a bad thing. You should definitely have your rights to it, and if it's easy, then yeah, try to be as private as you can. With email or messaging or money or whatever it is. But also we felt that maybe some people were just going over the top, and in trying to be super, super private, they kind of gave up everything anyway because they just kind of weren't going anywhere and weren't doing anything because they were trying to be so private. So yeah, I'll just put that out there, Angela. Any thoughts about that? Whether some people think privacy is better, or they overthink privacy and try to be too private. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, for each person, it's like a subjective, what privacy plays to you. I mean, I know philosophically there are people who believe that privacy doesn't matter, and people they're only private because they're ashamed. And I think that's quite wrong. I think that's quite misguided. Privacy, I think, is a very normal adult tendency. I don't feel I owe anyone anything about my life. Information, otherwise, record keeping. And this whole bizarre notion about record keeping about humanity is a weirdly governmental enterprise. It's not a normal thing. I mean, it's not something that, you would do in nature. It's something that, the way our quote civilization, if putting big air quotes around that, is developed. No, I think privacy is quite underrated, actually. And because I'm an activist in a controversial area, I've always been extremely careful about how I frame what I say about my private life or where I appear or what information I put out there, because I, understand just how thin some people's boundaries are, as well as, they call it doxing now, but basically it's harassment, and it's mostly done to women. That's a very common, that is a very common threat to keep people from speaking out is being doxxed or having one's family exposed or to, ridicule or embarrassment or physical harassment. So, no, I think privacy is very underrated, and even though I think it's great that we have all the, the libertarian movement has come to one of those great phases about where everyone's discussing sexual freedom, I think in that should be included the idea of sexual privacy, where you don't have to discuss your sexual life, proclivities, activities with anyone, and you owe no one any accounting for them. So, no, I think privacy is a wonderful thing. I mean, I do realize that a lot of libertarians, like in the way they live off the grid, I mean, they tend to not always be so creative in the ways they could be to really hide their privacy. Hiding your privacy doesn't mean you perhaps forego a driver's license and all the weird, stupid state privileges that go with that. But maybe you rethink how you get a driver's license or where you get a driver's license or what information you give to the DMV, these sorts of things. You're thinking through more carefully about how records are kept, what information you give to others, how you present yourself online. All these things, they can be done in creative ways to give you quite a bit of privacy.
Yeah, I think that's in a way like exactly what we were talking about, because I think when we were talking about privacy being overrated, we were kind of thinking in terms of the people who like won't get a driver's license at all, or like, I guess to make it more applicable to you, like if you were gonna do anti-war and use a pseudonym for like everything you did, and you would never talk about any of the stuff that you were writing on the website in person with anyone, because then they would link you with it and all that kind of stuff. Privacy to the point of where you're almost not even being a living human being that's like interacting with the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, the state kind of drives, kind of creates that weird personality distortion. Because at another time you could just be going about your business, living in a rural area, and not have to think too much about your privacy because no one would be out looking for you, and people knew them. I mean, I think most of the world's problems, like character defects and problems, that can all be traced to people not minding their own business.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
The crux of all this is people not minding their own business. Like, if people stayed out of each other's business, just think how much more civilized everything would be.
Yeah. I definitely completely agree. And also one of the reasons, like you said, Angela, I think you said paralyzed. You know, it seems like some people just kind of hide in a hole and don't accomplish anything because they go about privacy in all the wrong ways. And well, yeah, I guess I'll just say that, you know, the person that I had in mind when I was talking about being overly private, you know, now that I think about it, you know, this person was like, they were afraid to give their name out on the internet and use email addresses and stuff. And I thought that was weird, but now that I think about it, like, and the drawback of that is, you know, you can't be active, you can't promote liberty, you can't promote peace and stuff. But now that I think about it, even though this person was private like that, I think he actually did a whole lot of activism and accomplished a whole lot and reached a whole lot of people. And which actually, you know, like I said, now that I think about it, that actually makes him a pretty creative person, and I guess that's a good thing. So
you just have to keep things separate. That's part of the thing with the privacy thing, is keeping. Like, you see a lot of people on Twitter nowadays. They don't have, like, there's a lot of stuff on there now that people don't have their names up, people don't have their pictures up, and they never have. And they try to keep it safe because they don't want to be harassed outside of it. But that's an example. You can still do stuff outside of it. You just can't be associated with whatever brand you've built up behind the pseudonym.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, just, you know, just like with Bitcoin, you're right. It's Bitcoin is pseudonymous, and so you have your fake name, your fake Bitcoin address, which may or may not be linked to your real identity. But yeah, if you want to keep it separate, that separate identity can still accomplish a whole lot. It just stays separate. So I think that's true, and I think I agree. Yeah, so I guess we can wrap up here pretty soon. And before we do that, of course, we try to do our advice of the week. So I guess we'll just get right to it. Angela, we mentioned this ahead of time, so I will ask now, have you come up with any crazy advice about anything at all? About Bitcoin,
about
your
audience
peace?
is going to love this. No, this is going to be, this doesn't apply to everyone in your audience, but I can assure you it applies to some people in your audience. Gosh, should I even do this? I'm frightened, Steven.
Please piss our audience out.
Well, okay, this is very exciting. I discovered marijuana about a little over a decade ago, and it changed my life, but I didn't know how much it was going to change my life. And what's really, really exciting to me is that yesterday I went into a store, and this is going to be the thing that changes my life. I went into a marijuana shop, and there's 3 clerks. They're all busy. 2 of them are women, and I'm trying to position myself to speak to the women and not the men. And this is because I want to go in there and ask, and I did this, about THC cream suppositories for women's health. And this is like the thing that's going to be the most life-changing thing in my life. So my big advice is, whatever your problem is, no matter how difficult or painful, marijuana suppositories is going to be your answer.
Interesting. Man, that
you heard it here first, guys.
that is memorable, and yeah, I don't know much about it, but yeah, let's look into it, and let's encourage the audience to learn about it and see what it's all about.
Oh, I'm trying to think of a smoke weed every day joke off of this. God damn it!
Use what were they called again?
It's a suppository, so it needs to be. Oh, there's got to be something here.
Use suppositories every day. I mean,
no, no, shut up, Daniel.
Is that what you're going for?
No. Anyway, just keep going. Maybe I'll think of something.
Okay, well, like I said, interesting. I don't know much about it, but now I want to learn about it. So, well, I guess I'll throw my advice out there. And this is because we've always not always, but for a long time, we've called ourselves Your Bitcoin and Liberty Podcast. And we've focused on kind of the overlap between the two. I mean, sometimes we just talk about one or the other, but a lot of times we get into the overlap between Bitcoin and liberty. And we talked today about the overlap between Bitcoin and anti-war. And so what I want to say is, for anybody who's really just on one side of those, or I guess there's kind of three things: Bitcoin, anti-war, and liberty. Anybody who's just listening because of one of those things, look into the other ones too, because there is an overlap there, and there's a reason that so many people are interested in all of these things. So if you're here because you like Angela Keaton and you don't know anything about Bitcoin, go read up some about Bitcoin, which I don't know, it's kind of known enough now that I feel like almost everyone's done some reading on Bitcoin, but still, do some more. And same way the other way around. If you're here because we talk about Bitcoin, well, go to antiwar.com, learn what that's all about, and just, try to learn about the overlaps here. So,
yeah, I may just be hijacking
Expand your horizons.
I may be hijacking you a little bit, but I guess, like we've been saying kind of the whole show, if you do actually kind of delve into these things and look for what they're really about, I think you will see that at the very heart of it, there is a lot of overlap. Maybe it doesn't seem like that from the surface level, but I think it's there.
Yeah, that's actually something I episode 1 of this podcast, I knew very little, if anything, about liberty and about, anti-war or pro-peace. It really is Bitcoin that you can listen to the show and you'll see. I mean, the first episode, I'm asking Tim some questions, and I've told this story before a couple times, but my whole experience in the overlap started with Bitcoin, and then I just learned a whole lot more, and it took me here today. So yeah, I agree, John, and I think people should. And now, Tim, it's all on you. You're the one who has to close us out with some epic advice. Go for it.
Well, first off, somebody please tweet me or the show some kind of alternative to smoke weed every day that has to do with suppository, because there's something there that somebody else smarter than me is going to get to. But advice: check out antiwar.com and youmabtc.com, and
actually, those are good ones. I'll let you stop there if you want.
I don't want to stop there. Yeah, fuck it, I'll stop there.
All right. Well, hey, this has been great, Angela, and I want to give you one last chance we've already mentioned antiwar.com, but anything else? Yeah, I think you already mentioned your email, maybe your Twitter, but one last time as we close so that people know what to do as soon as they hit the stop button or they turn off their phone or whatever they're listening on. Where can people find you? Where can people reach out to you? What should they be doing? I mean, should they be contacting you about anything or tweeting you about anything? Where can people go from here?
They should always be giving us a monthly donation, which is tax deductible.
Oh, yeah.
You can always put it in Bitcoin or pretty much any other medium. We're happy to take your money. We're always happy to do that. It's we're basically, I'd say we're not quite 24/7 because we did slow down a little bit on Saturdays now, so the staff doesn't go crazy. But antiwar.com anytime. My email is akeaton@antiwar.com or angela@antiwar.com, and I always great at taking questions, and I love talking to libertarians about these sorts of things. So, whatever we can, do to help out and we can learn more and make you happy, just let me know. Email me.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely, guys, get out there and do that. And I'll say one more time, tweet to @antiwarcom and put us in there too, @you, me, and BTC, and use the hashtag #WhyIamAntiWar. and let us know why you are or why you're not. I don't know. Tweet us anything, because we just want to know. We want to know what's going on, whether you are or aren't anti-war, because if you're not, then we want to start arguing with you. So we'll do that.
Oh, that's great.
Angela, thanks so much for joining us today. And maybe we'll continue to have you most frequently, and hopefully it's pretty soon. So thanks a lot again for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, and can't wait to hear this episode.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.